So today I'm going to develop the sketches that I made of the park into an oil sketch, an oil study on canvas. I've done my homework, so I've collected some examples of some figures that I'm going to put into the composition, and much in the way that we worked last week with first the wash on the white paper and then the pastel, the chalk pastels on top. I'm going to start on a piece of white canvas. I'm going to lay down some tonal shapes in acrylic paint, which will dry pretty instantly, and then I'm going to apply oil colour on top. So I'm going to work on a small piece of white canvas. I've got some acrylic, some brown, some just burnt umber acrylic, and I've got the same sort of sponge that I was using last time when we were working with wash and pastel. I've diluted the acrylic quite a bit with water because I want to start off fairly gently, fairly softly. The acrylic, like the wash that we used last time, will dry and I won't be able to move it around once it's dry, the way I might have moved charcoal around. So that's why I'm partly doing it thinly to start, just so I can see whether I like what I'm putting down. While it's wet as well, I can also take a rag to it and lift it off. And of course, I'm also wanting to include my figures. So I'm getting the basic kind of setting of my trees against the mountain. Like the wash, currently it's single strength, but I could actually put it on more thickly as I become more certain about what I want to do. And I think I want my figures quite large. So maybe this player will be here. And again, as we were doing with the wash and the pastel, the idea is to give yourself something to get your composition started, but something that's not doesn't have to be that precise. There's got to be a degree of precision, but it's something that can be worked into and modified with the oil paint. And again, a bit like the pastel, as well as having the tonal start, which is a kind of guide and some contrast, there's also going to be the white areas of canvas, which will allow for a sort of more luminous quality to the colour. So let's hope we get the best of both worlds. I'll do a little bit more to those figures, partly so I can find them. And you will have found, I'm sure, when you're working with the pastel on the white paper, that it can often become much more a process of really working with the negative shapes, so defining, it may have been trees or mountains, defining them partly through the shapes next to them or around them. So I think I wouldn't mind one more tree. I'll just look at another study that I've got. I'm also looking at this one, wondering, can I get something of a tree in here? That might do it. Okay, so that's the acrylic. I think I probably won't do much more with it, but it's giving me a guide, it's giving me a kind of tonal structure as well. And I'll let that dry and then I'll start putting oil on top. So I've pre-mixed some colours in oil, and much like the work with pastel over wash, initially I'm just blocking in areas of colour. I can put it on fairly solidly, as I've done there, and in that way the oil can more or less kind of obliterate the acrylic tone, or I can thin it out a little bit and let some of that tone show through. At this stage, really, it's getting things covered and seeing really what to refine and what to allow to show through. So you're perhaps not seeing such a difference. You see a bit of a difference there where I've let the paint go on a bit more thinly, and so some of the white canvas shows through where I didn't put the acrylic. So it's really a process of getting the colour on and then really examining what to retain of the effects of the acrylic and what to modify. And as I was saying, once I get to these figures in particular, it's going to be very much about negative shapes, using the colours around them as much as the colours in the figures themselves to define them and to develop them. So I'll just refer a bit to my drawings. I've got my figures here so I can see how to. So there will be places where I want the yellow-green of the grass to actually obliterate some of the acrylic that I laid down. And you might remember when you did this with pastel, it's really a question of degree, how thickly you put the pastel on. If you'd worked with the side of the pastel and put down some sort of washes of colour, then probably the ink wash would show through. But when you want the pastel, or in this case the oil paint, to obliterate or override the acrylic start, then the oil needs to go on just a little bit more solidly. So it's really working with almost different paint consistencies to allow you the choice between covering something or letting the underlayer show through. I suppose it's an example of the sort of work where you have to do a lot of standing back in order to judge what to keep and what to lose. So that's a bit of a start. I want to get rid of most of the white, because then I can be a little bit more in control of what I make stand out and what I use lighter colours on, so that I can control the contrast and the attention that different parts of the painting will get. I'll get a little bit up into this foreground tree. So I would like to lose as much of the white unpainted canvas as I can, so that I can then go on and be a bit more in control of how the light or the contrast is viewed. A little bit of filling in to make sure that that's the case. But equally, I can take a rag to some of these lighter areas and maybe thin out some of that paint a bit, so that I can be working with lighter colours created through the white canvas showing through, but also lighter colours which I'll probably need to float on the surface with slightly more substantial paint. So next couple of things would be to perhaps work on the figures a little bit, because they are a different colour scheme and I'd like them to stand out through their colour, and probably to darken some of the other colours which are currently dark because of the acrylic underpainting. I'll do a little bit of the darkening of the setting first, because I think that might help me to develop my figures. So as I say, the dark initially was just that acrylic underlayer. But now I've made some dark colours, some dark greens, and that's allowing me to increase that contrast. I'm going to put it a bit into their shadows. And then I've made some colours for these footballers. I think we need one in red. That might be a useful colour to distinguish him. I made something dark for their hair. So I'm not being that tidy yet about each of these refinements. I'm just testing out really the effect of the colour of the layer and the edges. I think I always feel painting is very much about edges, and I'll work on those edges gradually. So I'm not racing to tidy up the difference between the acrylic layer and the oil layer. But I will do as I see the effect. So that's coming along. And I will be continuing really to build up the paint in such a way that there will be areas of thinner, more dilute oil, allowing the effect of the white canvas underneath to be seen, and then other areas, edges like this, where I really want to almost obliterate. I mean, actually to have a kind of slightly broken or varied edge will often add depth to a painting, add form to a figure. And maybe lastly, I'll just get some of those tree trunks in, because again, I think that was quite important to my composition, this avenue of trees in the background. So that's putting the acrylic down much as we did the wash, just to create some sort of tonal structure. And it may even just be a case of, rather than being confronted by a bare white canvas, you're able to lay down some shapes which then start the process, which becomes eventually a more kind of confident, certain process of adding colour in response to that tonal arrangement. So we'll be in the studio on Monday, and I will have canvas, small scale canvas, and acrylic for that first layer, and then you'll be able to work in oil afterwards. Okay, we'll see you then. Bye bye.